Okay, um, I guess we're live now. All right. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Tour Guides Academy webinars. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Tour. This is the first episode of our season 2, and we have a very special guest tonight, Dr. Mark Wilson. Dr. Wilson is the founder and the director of Asia Minor Research Center in Antalya, Turkey, the country where he and his wife, Dindi, have lived since 2004. Mark received the title of Doctor of Literature and Philosophy in New Testament at the University of South Africa, where he is also a research fellow. He is also a professor extraordinary of New Testament in Stellenbosch University. He has taught New Testament studies at Oral Roberts University and Regent University. He is a member of many academic societies, including the Society of Biblical Literature and the American Society of Overseas Research. Mark is the author of numerous books and articles, including Biblical Turkey, Victory Through the Lamb, and The Spirit Said Go. He regularly leads biblical and archaeological tours in the Eastern Mediterranean. And in Turkey, he is, of course, best known, especially among the Turkish tour guides, by his work, Biblical Turkey. This book has become almost a handbook for most of the tour guides who are currently working in Turkey, especially running the biblical tours. So, Dr. Wilson, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gokhan, for the very kind and generous introduction. And again, it's my pleasure to be with you this evening and talk about this quite interesting topic. And so when the invitation came from Mejid Bey to do this, I thought I wanted to focus on this dimension of Christian faith tourism here in Anatolia, and to look at particularly Paul's journeys and the 7 churches, because these are the 2 primary itineraries then that groups who come over here in their travels throughout the country, the sites that they're looking at. So before I begin, I just want to give a little bit of introduction about myself and how I got involved with faith tourism here. So it's been 30 years ago. It's hard to believe that I made my first trip to Turkey and visited the 7 churches at that time. And for me, it was just a real life-changing visit, because I'd never been out of the United States before, and I was just beginning my own doctoral study. So for me to come over here and travel and see the 7 churches made a real impact on me. And in subsequent years, I traveled to Israel on faith tours in 1993 and 97. And then I led my first biblical tour to Turkey in 1994. Led my first student biblical tour here in 1999. And since then, I've led really hundreds of biblical tours here, Israel, Jordan, Greece, Italy, Malta, North Macedonia, Albania, France, and Spain. So I know the faith tourism market very well in not only the Eastern Mediterranean, but on the Western Mediterranean as well. One of the things I also do is help to facilitate many individual pilgrimages. I constantly get emails from people asking me questions. Is it safe to drive in Turkey? Can I rent a car? Can I book my hotel rooms? And giving advice on individuals who are traveling not in a tour group, but on their own. And then one of the real joys that I've had is to do numerous seminars for tour guides beginning in 2001, something like we're engaged with tonight. You can see I look quite a bit younger here. 20 years ago, this is the first seminar we did in Izmir in 2001. This is at the Anglican Church there. And this was really breaking new ground here, because the whole aspect of faith tourism, especially with the biblical tours, was new. And so that was the beginning of a number of such tours. So most recently, I was in Cappadocia for this Faith Tourism Congress, did a presentation there, and with my friend Majid, who is a guide and president of the Israel group. And then just 2 weeks ago, I was over in Izmir doing a 7 churches tour for guides. And we had a number of guides from around the country, from Istanbul, Adana, Bursa, as well as Izmir. But so I expect in the audience today, we've got some guides who have never conducted a biblical tour. We've got some that have conducted a few and are trying to increase their knowledge, and maybe a few of you who are experts. And so I really want to emphasize that in all the tours I do, I always work with a tour guide. It's a wonderful relationship that I have. I'm always learning from my guides. And so it's you are the face of Turkey to the guests who come from around the world. And so you have such an important part to play in making a successful faith tour. So I'm grateful for all of you who are spending this time this evening to be a part of this seminar. So we want to begin with Paul of Tarsus. So he's a native son of this country, from this land. Here's the famous St. Paul's Well in Tarsus today. That's a place of tourist visit as part of coming here. And it's been said that after Jesus Christ himself, Paul is really the most important figure in early Christianity. And we have 13 books in the New Testament, 27 books total in the New Testament, 13 of those written by Paul. And so he is a major figure in the New Testament, early Christianity. And as a result of that, the tours that come here very much want to intersect and visit those places that were related to Paul. And so many groups will start over in this area in the southeastern part of Turkey. So this is a map of Paul's Mediterranean world, and you can see he went all the way from what is today Israel and Lebanon, and now Asia Minor, all the way to Rome in his journeys. So ancient travel in the ancient world was very common, and we see Paul making many journeys. And so I want to focus in particularly on the journeys that took place here in Asia Minor, Anatolia, and the sites that are related to those. And so these are the ones that people read about in their New Testaments, especially the book of Acts, and the places that they want to see. So please, if you've got any questions, jot them down, and we will pick them up later when I conclude the PowerPoint. A few years ago, I was involved with a Science Channel production. They were filming here in the street right in downtown Tarsus that they'd excavated. And so this is part of the Cardo Maximus there. You can see from the basalt stone, very well preserved. And Paul very might well have walked on this street when he lived in the city. And we can see in the book of Acts, and I'm going to be giving you various references here, and I really encourage you as you're working with faith tours to be reading some of these documents in the Turkish Bible, the Injil, as well as in the English or whatever language you're working in. Some of you might be doing German groups, some Korean, but be familiar with these scriptures that deal especially with Paul in these cities. And later in his life, he makes this comment: I'm a Jew and a citizen of Tarsus in Cilicia, which is an important city. So Paul was very proud of being from the city of Tarsus. And then later it says, I am a Jew born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in Jerusalem. And so again, we see the mobility in the ancient world. Probably my own personal view, he went away to school in Jerusalem and came back to his family every year, traveled down there, and he studied Jewish law in Jerusalem, something he could not get in Tarsus, although he does claim that he is a Pharisee and son of Pharisees. So that was a very conservative religious sect, typically not living outside of Israel, but Paul claims that his family was part of the Pharisees, and that he grew up actually not only speaking Greek, but probably Hebrew and Aramaic as well. So he's quite an educated man. So the story begins with Paul in Acts 11, 25, 26. Then Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul. So the church had begun in Antioch. You can see where Antioch is, modern Antakya on the Orontes River. He went to Tarsus, and when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. And so we can see that journey. And Paul back in Tarsus, living for a period of time, we don't know exactly, but a few years after his conversion on the road to Damascus. But he comes back now to Antioch and begins to help the new disciples of Jesus. And it's in this time now that these disciples are called Christians for the first time. So this is a very important step in the identity formation of the young community of Jesus followers. This is what Antakya looks like today, from the Mount Silpius to the east, and city just continues to grow. And again, one of the big challenges here in visiting Antakya is the modern city is built over the ancient city. And so this is why it was so very exciting. Many of you are aware of it. One of the business men in Antakya began to build a hotel just opposite the Peter Grotto and toward the Archaeology Museum. And they discovered this large mosaic. And as they just continued to excavate, it grew into a city block with ruins and excavation. And the result is a substantial investment to build what is now called the Museum Hotel there in Antakya. And I had the pleasure of staying there with a group this spring. And I can tell you it's one of the most significant or incredible hotel experiences I've ever had anywhere in the world. So this is something definitely to see with groups, and if possible to stay in the hotel. There is a museum on the front that is free of charge for groups to come in if they're not staying in the hotel, and you can walk down and actually see the mosaic that's there. So, you know, this is why here in Turkey, it's just amazing with all the new excavations, new discoveries, and it's a constantly changing and evolving landscape with this new information that they reveal. Now, Antakya, of course, does not sit on the coast. So today you drive down to Samandağ and drive up the coast a little farther, and you come to the remains of the ancient outer harbor at Seleucia Pieria. And this is where Paul and Barnabas departing on their first journey from this area. One of the things we do here, I don't have the picture, is to visit the Titus Tunnel, which is just a few hundred meters inland to the east, and which is the most incredible works of Roman engineering that we have in the country today. So really a wonderful site. And of course, history is made here. Paul begins his first journey from this harbor in Seleucia Pieria. So you can see on the right, Barnabas is from Cyprus, today in northern Cyprus at Salamis. You can visit there, and we sometimes do that with groups. We've got a Paul seminar going on next July in 2023, and beginning in Antakya, and then we will include northern Cyprus, go down to Paphos in the south as well. But this is where Barnabas is from, the island of Cyprus, and they begin there. And then after traveling across the island, they turn northward to the coast here of Asia Minor, landing at Magadus, the port of Perge, and traveling inland then to these cities in what is the province of Galatia. And so we'll be looking at some of those sites here. So I can only be suggestive as I go through here. I have many more slides, of course. And these are all photos I've taken through the years, through my travels here. And in Acts 13:13, we see from Paphos, again, that's in south western coast of Cyprus, Paul and his companions sailed to Perga in Pamphylia. So the remains of the Hellenistic towers there that Paul and Barnabas would have walked through as they passed through the city on their way inland to Pisidian Antioch. So Paul must have been a very fit man because of all the walking he did. I mean, just I've made this trip a number of times, and part of it walking, going up around Burdur Lake and up by Keçiborno and Uluborno, and following the ancient Via Sebaste. And it's a distance, roughly of 250 kilometers. So they're walking this usually about 30 kilometers a day, and can make a journey like this in approximately 12 days or so. But going on from Perga, Paul and Barnabas arrived at Pisidian Antioch. So I remember the first time I brought a tour here, the guide was with me, says, "Are you sure you know where you're going? We're out in the middle of nowhere." She had never been to Yalvac before. And as we pulled into town and followed the signs there, this is one of the amazing things that you see is the remains of this imperial cult temple that's built up at the upper city here in Pisidian Antioch today. And so something, again, Paul and Barnabas would have seen while they were visiting here. And probably they go through this city and the other cities here in Middle Galatia at least 4 times on their journeys. Again, Konya today has very few archaeological remains, again, because the modern city is built over ancient Iconium. But there is a very nice small archaeology museum we go to. And our groups especially like to see these stones. So the stone on the left is brought in from Lystra, and it's mentioned right in this line. I can't see it here, but Iconium is mentioned in this line. And this stone to the right is brought from Ekanuzu, from the site of Derbe. So all 3 of these cities that Paul visited on his first journey are all mentioned in these inscriptions here in the Konya Museum. One of the, and then as they left Iconium, they traveled not very far down the road to the small village today of Hatunsarai, and leaving the area of Phrygia and going into the region of Lycaonia. It says the apostles fled to the region of Lycaonia to the towns of Lystra and Derbe and the surrounding area. And so when you go to Lystra today, it's just an empty huyuk like this, and it's possible to walk up there. And of course, most of you have made trips on top of these and seen pottery shards and other pieces of marble and whatnot that are there. We have only really 2 sites now in Turkey that have not been excavated. Lystra is one of them. There's been a small excavation started at Derbe, but that has not continued. And then we have survey work going on at Colossae now under Barış Yener from Pamukkale University. And he is hoping to get a permit from the ministry in Ankara to begin an excavation there in the coming years. So that will be very important for the work there in that area. So this is what Derbe looks like today. This is one of the joys of traveling in the springtime here, because you get all the wildflowers, and to be there and be able to photograph them. So again, we just have another Bear Huyuk, and the next day Paul and Barnabas left for Derbe. So sometimes, because there's not a lot to see here, some groups to save time will skip these, for example, and they'll come up right from Tarsus, go through the Cilician gates to Ereğli and go straight to Konya before going over to Pisidian Antioch. But it's interesting to drive across these because you see the great distances involved, again, that Paul walked between these cities. And of course, this is where I'm speaking to you from now, here in Antalya, ancient Anatolia. And at the end of this journey, they have gone back to Perga again, repeated basically their journey in reverse. They preached the word in Perga, they went down to Antalya, and from there they sailed to Antioch. So this is the small harbor marina, of course, in Anatolia today. So first journey summary. So these are the chapters 13 and 14 in the book of Acts that tell about Paul's travels. The date is roughly about 46 to 48. He's traveling with Barnabas, and then the cousin of Barnabas, John Mark, is with the group until through Cyprus, but leaves them at Perge. And so what's very significant is now some of the first churches that we have here in Asia Minor are planted in Pisidian Antioch, Iconium, Lystra, Derbe, Perge, and possibly Atalia. And of Paul's letters of the 13 we mentioned, probably Galatians is his first, and he writes that to these churches after he returns to Antioch. So first of all, Paul's letter written about 48 from Antioch. So here's his second journey. Paul is actually wanting to go to Ephesus, but as he enters the province of Asia, and you can see this here, where Paul is diverted here by the Holy Spirit, and he turns northward, tries to go into Bithynia. He can't go there, and then he makes his way through this backcountry along Mysia, making his way down through what is today Adramyttium, modern Edremit, and on up to Alexandria, Troas here. And so the bulk of this journey is not in Asia Minor, but he spends time in the Roman province of Macedonia, which is modern Greece in this area today, and then travels down to Corinth, and he spends a year and a half there. And then he finally leaves, comes back to Ephesus, and travels back to Caesarea and Jerusalem here at the end, and then makes his way back up to Antioch. So all of his trips really begin and end in Antioch. So we've got very few things other than revisiting these churches here in Galatia that he's written the book of Galatians to, and probably he's founding a church up in this area as well. So this is the wonderful Roman road just north of Tarsus. I was just speaking last Saturday to a guide friend who had taken two couples, two husbands and wives, up to this with a van. You cannot get to this road with a big bus, but it's one of the best preserved Roman roads that we have in Turkey today. And it's roughly about 15 kilometers north of Tarsus at near a village called Salaklıköy. And so it's really one of the treasures we have in the country. And we see Paul going through Syria and Cilicia, the two areas, strengthening the churches. Then he came to Derbe and Lystra. So again, telling us he's revisiting these churches he started in the first journey. This is another piece that is in the Konya Museum that is one of the earliest Christian artifacts that we have in the country today. And it stands just right inside the fence at the entrance here at the museum. And you can see it's really a unique piece. So we have the wreath, and it's clearly Christian, dating sometime to the early 3rd century, 200s. So this is now before Christianity is legalized. We see the cross in the shape of an anchor with the wreath surrounding it. And then we have this very interesting figure of a man whose head is inside the mouth of a fish. And of course, this is the story of Jonah, Yunus, the story of Yunus and the fish or the whale. And this symbol became very important for Christians based on something Jesus had said in Matthew 12:40. He says, "For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." So he's talking about after his crucifixion, he'll be 3 days, 3 nights like Jonah, and then rise from the dead. And so this becomes an important symbol of resurrection. And we see this in this incredible sarcophagus there at the Konya Museum showing that. So they go down to Alexandria, Troas. There's really not a lot at this site today. It's amazing to think that Julius Caesar proposed this to be the capital of the Eastern Empire today in the village of Dalian. There's not much here in the province of Çanakkale. But again, this is an important transit point for Paul on his journey. So we see, Paul, Barnabas, and Timothy passed by Mysia and went down to Troas. So this is the inner harbor for Alexandria Troas. And you can see the island of Tenedos, Bozcaada in the distance there. And we know that Paul goes through this city because there was a ferry service that connected this with the Roman province of Macedonia at Neapolis. And Paul went through here at least 4 times on his journey. So it was very important for him. So at the end of the journey, after he spends a year and a half in Corinth, he sails across the Aegean and lands here in Ephesus. So Paul now finally arrives at the city that he had hoped to get at the beginning. And here he lifts the companions Priscilla and Aquila. And so when Paul arrives now at Ephesus, there's already a church here. So Paul does not begin the church, the work here in Ephesus, but he is there to encourage the believers who are there, and he leaves Priscilla and Aquila to do that. It says he goes into the synagogue there, reasons with the Jews. They invite him to stay, but he's trying to get to Jerusalem. So he says, if God's will is, I will return. So, of course, here's the Harbor Way coming out from the theater. And in the springtime of the year, you can see the area where the ancient harbor was located here, where the water fills in this area. So Paul first arrives by boat from Corinth to Ephesus at the end of the second journey. One of the interesting treasures, again, that we have in Ephesus, this grotto of Paul that's there. Occasionally, visitors are allowed to go into it. It's on the hillside just a bit further from the terrace houses. You have to get permission. This is Cengiz Bey, retired director of the Ephesus Museum, with a study group that we had, and we were given permission to go up into the grotto. And we have one of the earliest portraits of Paul inside this. And here you can see his name to the left side of his head, Paulus. And I don't have the figures on either side. To the left side, we have a young woman by the name of Thecla. To his right, another woman, Thecla's mother, called Theoclea. And so this tells a story of what happened when Thecla heard Paul preaching when he was in Iconium. And she broke off her engagement to a Roman young man and got in a lot of trouble for that. So it recounts that story related to Paul. So in terms of early Christian artifacts and frescoes, this is found in the Grotto Church there in Ephesus. So second journey summary, you can see the chapters in Acts that comprise that journey. The dates there about 49 to 52. Silas comes with him. Now Barnabas has taken John Mark and gone back to Cyprus, but so Silas is now traveling with Paul. And then in Lystra, Paul meets Timothy, who lives there. And so Timothy becomes like a spiritual son to Paul. Paul, as far as we know, never married, never had children, but he always calls Timothy, along with Titus, his spiritual sons. And he comes from this little town of Lystra, today called Hatunsarai. So it's kind of a good reminder that important people can come from very small beginnings. And then in Alexandria Troas, when they arrive there, we see the narrative turning from third person. They went, and it says, we passed over to Philippi. And it indicates this is the first of what's called the we passages, where Luke himself is traveling with Paul and his other companions. So what churches? Any new churches? Maybe something in Mysia. We have some of our earliest Christian inscriptions around ancient Kadi, modern Yedi's there. probably a church in Troas, and of course he is in Ephesus, strengthening the Christians there at the end of the journey. And the two letters that are written here are both written to First and Second Thessalonians, modern Greek city of Thessaloniki. So these were the letters written on this journey. Now we come to his third journey, and this is, of course, where he spends the most time here in Anatolia. And again,
Dr. Wilson,
yes.
excuse me, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm getting a few messages. I think there is a notification on your screen. Could you please click on the hide button to the right?
Oh, hide. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I was afraid if I touched that, something would go bad would happen, but okay. So we see Paul again beginning in Antioch, and he passes once again through Cilicia and makes his way to Derbe and Lystra and Konya, Pisidian Antioch, and ends up in Ephesus. And from Ephesus, we can see he later travels up the coast back to Troas, again goes back into the Roman province of Macedonia to visit the churches. He starts on the second journey. Travels all the way on the Via Egnatia over through Illyricum, comes down back to Corinth and Athens, then revisits what is today northern Greece, and then travels by ship all the way down the western coast here of Asia Minor before he makes his way down to Caesarea and Jerusalem. So you can see this is an extensive journey that he's making here. You even try and make that journey today, and it's a very tiring one. So, for example, when we do the Paul trips, I did this this spring in May, starting in Antioch, and most of the time then we'll end up in Çanakkale. It's about 1,600 kilometers by bus to visit all the Pauline sites. So even by coach and with air conditioning, it's a very tiring journey. It takes anywhere from 12 to 13 days to see all these sites. So, and again, we remind our guests who may be complaining about long days that Paul had to do this on foot usually, and in heat and wind and rain and hail and all kinds of weather conditions he's traveling. So he was quite the traveler. And so we see it mentioned after spending some time in Antioch, Paul sets out from there and travels from place to place throughout the region of Galatia and Phrygia. So again, revisiting the churches, he starts on the first journey and then passes through the inland country and comes to Ephesus. So most of you recognize the Upper Agora in Ephesus today in the springtime with beautiful flowers. So Paul now settles in Ephesus, a very important period in his ministry. Acts chapter 19 describes this period of time. It says he took disciples with him and had discussions daily in the lecture hall of Tyrannus. Archaeologists have not found this hall, but most likely it was in the lower city, somewhere in this area. Of course, the Library of Celsus was not there in the first century, but the gateway of Musaeus and Mithridates was there into the lower Tetragonus or commercial agora. Paul was a tent maker. He worked with Priscilla and Aquila, and it's probably in this area that he rented space to work. And he would work at his trade in the morning, and then in the afternoon have his lectures and discussions nearby at the Hall of Tyrannus. And it says this went on for 2 years, so that all the Jews and Greeks who lived in the province of Asia heard the word of the Lord. So this is quite an important summary statement, because later as we begin talking about the 7 churches, we ask the question, when were these started? And most likely it's during this period when Paul is in Ephesus. Perhaps he travels out to some of the cities and preaches and starts churches there. But we know clearly from the book of Colossians and Philemon that a person from the Denizli area, we'll be talking about that later, Epaphras, heard Paul in Ephesus and came back and planted churches in the Lycus Valley. So very important here for this development and spread of Christianity in Asia. So here's our province of Asia that we're looking at. The province is broken down into 13 administrative districts, and we can see that these important cities related to the 7 churches, and we'll be talking about in just a minute, were all a part of this province of Asia. And of course, the important event that takes place here at the end of Paul's time is the riot inaugurated by the silversmiths, who are upset with Paul for causing a decline in their business. And Acts 19 says, when Paul wanted to go into the assembly, the disciples did not let him. Even some Asiarch friends sent him a message urging him not to venture into the theater. So it's in this space then for 2 hours that the crowd was shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." And the town clerk finally comes, dispels the mob, and restores order in the city. This is the space where this takes place. And so one of the things that groups often like to do as we go into the theater is kind of climb up a little bit higher. I like to take them so it's not so noisy and just sit and have the people in the group actually read this story from the book of Acts. So you can imagine it's quite meaningful to be sitting in a place reading something, an event so important to Paul that took place here in that theater. So after he leaves Ephesus, he goes up the coast. He arrives back in Troas again, and he writes later to 2 Corinthians. I should mention that while he's in Ephesus, Paul writes 1 Corinthians during his 2.5+ years there. As he's traveling northward now, he comes to Troas, does not stay, and then, as we said, travels back over to Macedonia and meeting the cities there. And as he comes back now from what is modern Greece, the provinces of Achaia and Macedonia, he comes back to Troas again with a group of men. 8 men are traveling with him, and we can see we join the others at Troas, where we stayed 7 days. So once again, the narrator of Acts, we're in a we passage. So this is Luke now, who is traveling with Paul on this part of the journey. So this is part of the Decumanus Maximus that's been uncovered in Alexandria, Troas today, part of the excavations. A few years ago, we actually walked the route beginning from here all the way down to Assos, because Acts 20 tells us that Paul's companions went ahead by ship down to Assos while he walked overland, first down to the Sminthian and then continued on to Assos. And so we see here now Paul meets the rest of his companions there in Assos, and they went on board and went on to Mytilene. So they're in what's called a coasting vessel, traveling down the western coast of Asia Minor, between the coast and what is today the Greek islands. And so this particular coasting trip down by ship down the western coast, they come across over from Samos, and then they come to Miletus. And from Miletus, Paul sent a messenger asking the elders of the church to meet him. And so many of you who have been to Miletus in the springtime know that oftentimes because of high water levels, it's very swampy there. Oftentimes it's midsummer before in the central area of the city is dry enough to walk there. This happened to be a few years ago when there was a lot of water, and you can see that how Miletus actually was sitting in the ancient Gulf of Latmus that's now all dried up except for Baffa Lake at the upper end, which is all that remains of this great gulf. And this is the remains of the Lion Harbor right in front of us, one of the harbors of Miletus. And we don't know which harbor Paul met and spoke to the elders, but it could very well have been this Lion Harbor here on the northern tip of Miletus. They set sail the next day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. And we found the ship crossing over to Phoenicia, went on board and set sail. So the coasting vessel that they're traveling on is not going any farther than Patara. So Paul and his companions have to find another ship that's going to take them all the way over to the Eastern Mediterranean. They find one, and they set sail for Caesarea Maritima, the port of the Roman province of Judea. And I think we're all looking forward to see what the restored lighthouse is going to look like. This is what it looked like several years ago there. And it's hard to imagine that the harbor came up close to this, and these sand dunes were all underwater at some point. But this is a very important project they've been doing in Patara. The dating of the lighthouse seems to be just a couple years after Paul was in the city. So unless there was an earlier version of a lighthouse here, which could well have been, Paul would not have seen this particular version. So, summary of the third journey. So we have it from Acts 18 through 21, dates 53 to 57, Timothy, Titus, Erastus, and other companions. As we said, Antioch, 2.5 years or more in Ephesus, Troas, and then in Greece, and then coming back with Miletus, Patara, and to Jerusalem. And he's writing 1st and 2nd Corinthians and Romans during this time. So the final journey we want to talk about briefly here is his captivity journey. So upon arrival in Jerusalem, Paul is taken into custody, taken down to the Roman governor at Caesarea Maritima, and he's 2 years under house arrest there. And Paul is a Roman citizen, so he finally uses his right as a citizen and appeals to Caesar. He realizes he's not going to get a fair trial in Judea. So he appeals to Caesar, and he makes his way again under guard. He's a prisoner now up the eastern coast in a coasting vessel. They pass along the coast of Cilicia, come to Myra, and the other main port in Lycia, and then pass by Knidos before they go down underneath Crete, and they have the famous shipwreck that occurs on the way to Rome. So just the harbor at Andreake, that's today, this is where these boats, many of you have taken groups from here over to Kekova. And then, of course, to the left of here is the really restored granarium from time of Hadrian, and the synagogue that's been found nearby, as well as the new Museum of Lycian Civilization. So this is really a significant site now for visits here. And then, of course, we're nearby Myra, the St. Nicholas Church and the Lycian tombs and whatnot. So this is one of my top 10 favorite sites in Turkey. So it's wonderful. And then Knidos, further down the coast from Dacia. This is the North Harbor, and really a marvelous archaeological excavation. And this is the last site that Paul would have seen on his way to Rome. So from Rome, we know that he wrote 4 what we call prison letters, 3 of these to churches here in Asia Minor, Ephesians, Colossians, and Philemon. And in Colossians 4, we have, and I mentioned Epaphras, probably the founder of the church here, says he's working hard for you and for those in Laodicea and Hierapolis. After this letter has been read to you, see that it is also read in the church of the Laodiceans, and that you in turn read the letter from Laodicea. So 3 important letters then from this later period in Paul's life related to the 3 churches in the Lycus Valley. So that's enough for Paul. Let's move on. We're getting, time is continuing, and we want to move on to the 7 churches. This is an icon of John, the Theologos, the Revelator. 4 times he's called that in the book of Revelation. Tradition, church history sees him as the disciple of Jesus, the apostle, and then the elder, and the only one of the 12 of Paul or Jesus' disciples that dies a natural death. All the others end as martyrs. So as we mentioned, he is found in the Gospels. Among the books in the New Testament, he's the author of Revelation, along with the fourth gospel, the Gospel of John, and then 3 letters or epistles, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. So he comes to Asia from Jerusalem before it's destroyed in AD 70, and then the tradition is he dies in Ephesus after 98, sometime during the reign of the Emperor Nerva. And of course, his tomb in Ephesus becomes a place of pilgrimage like that of the Apostle Philip in Hierapolis. And so this is why we still visit these sites with our faith tourist groups. 2 of the most important places we visit are the tombs of these apostles, John and Philip. So again, a look at the province of Asia with all of the churches. So that we see there's actually more than 7 churches in Asia, and the 7 becomes sort of a symbolic number of all the churches there. So John's writing to these 7 churches in Asia, and he's on the island of Patmos. So today, Patmos is a Greek island, basically about 60 kilometers straight west of Miletus. And this is where we take groups sometimes. Very important to our 7 churches, again, is this road that the first Roman governor of Asia, Manius Aquilius, built. There's a milestone that you can see. It's in Latin and Greek, right near the Harbor Way in the exit if you're coming from the upper city in Ephesus. It's on display there, original, giving mile 5 that's found southeast of Ephesus at Chamlik. So this road is extremely important, and it begins in Pergamum and Ephesus, joins at Laodicea, actually comes all the way down to Cedes, joining the Aegean ports with Cedes. And it's this route then the messenger to the 7 churches travels here, following this important road. So we mentioned it's written from Patmos, where John has been exiled by the governor. 7 churches, and we'll be talking about those. Book of Revelation that ends the New Testament. It's a very challenging and difficult book to read. It has prophecies about the past, present, and future, plus warnings about false teaching, and then admonitions or exhortations to holy living in the book. And we see that suffering is a major theme because the Emperor Nero had recently persecuted Christians in Rome, including killing both Peter and Paul after the Great Fire there. So this is a period of great turmoil in the Roman Empire. Many years ago, on one of the boats that we take, charter boats from Kuşadası, and do a day trip over to Patmos. I'm going to give you a couple slides. Some of you may have visas to go to the Greek islands and can go with a group over here. I encourage you to make the trip if you can. It's about 3.5 hours one way. You have about 3 hours on the island and then about 4 hours back. So this year in June, it was quite surprising. The weather was so rough. First time it's happened to me. Our group was forced to stay overnight on Patmos before we could come back the following day to Kuşadası. So you never know what these seas will be like. So when you arrive at Patmos, there's 2 main things that the groups see. So they'll often combine a 7 churches tour with this one-day excursion over to Patmos. Go to the Church of the Apocalypse, and this is the traditional place where John had his vision. You can see the modern fresco above the door there with John dictating the letter to, and this is the tradition that the Greek guides tell us when we visit, that his nephew Prochorus was there, and he is the scribe writing down the vision as it's being dictated. So this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site now. And the other thing we go up to is this monastery that's above the port. This dates clear back to 1099. And so this is part of what makes the island of Patmos the Holy Island, still in Greece today. And so basically it's about a 1 hour visit to the church, another hour to the monastery, and then our groups go back to the port for some lunch and shopping, and then get on the boat back to Kuşadası. So anyway, that's what a day trip to Patmos is all about. Now, when we talk about the 7 churches, it's very important to emphasize we're not talking about buildings, okay? So we're not talking, because the first church buildings come only after Christianity is legalized in the 4th century. So what we're talking about in the 7 churches then are assemblies or congregations or groups of people. The Greek word here is ecclesiae, of Christians, and they're located in these 7 cities. So for 250 years then, Christianity is not a legal religion, so followers of Jesus had to meet in homes or apartments. So we call these sometimes house churches then. And so all other religious groups, including the Jews till AD 70, had temples with priests who offered sacrifices to the various gods and goddesses. Of course, the Jews offered it, being monotheistic, only to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it's interesting, and we have this from the martyrdom of Polycarp and others, that Christians were called atheists because they had no temple buildings, no priesthood, and did not offer animal sacrifices. So they had no outward sign or indication that they were a religion. And so they were called atheists. Quite an interesting thing, historical thing. Now, in the slides that come up, we won't have time to read each of the messages. You'll be able to, if you want to, go back and look at these on your own. I wanted to provide those for you. But there are 7 sections repeated in these 7 messages to the 7 churches. We have an address, a command to write to the angel of each church, a title, a descriptive title of Jesus begins, that's drawn from an opening vision. There's commendation for a church's positive deeds. One church has no commendation, and that's Laodicea. There's some blame or rebuke for negative deeds. There's 2 churches that there's nothing negative said about them, and that's the churches of Smyrna and Smyrna and Philadelphia. Then there's a call to repentance with judgment for those who don't. A call to hear and obey what the Spirit says to the churches. And then finally, various promises to victors who overcome Satan and the 2 beasts. And these are all realized at the end of Revelation in the new heaven and new earth. So these are the 7 parts of each of the letters. So here's the message to Ephesus. And again, we don't have time to read this. It will be there if you want to consult it later. So, of course, the Temple of Artemis, the city of Ephesus, noted for that, being the Neocorus or temple warden for Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And you can imagine that this becomes, as we saw with Paul, an opponent of Christianity because of Paul's preaching was hurting the sale of the silver shrine of the shrines of Artemis and caused the riot. The 3rd imperial cult temple in the province of Asia was built here in Ephesus in the 80s. As you look across Domitian Square there, you can see the Temple of Domitian built on the substructure just to the west side of the state agora, the foundations of the altar, and then the reconstructed altar above that you see later in the Ephesus Museum. So this is built in the 80s, and then later when Domitian is assassinated, it's rededicated to his brother Titus, his father Vespasian. Now the sign in the museum says this is the head of Domitian. But if you look at coins of Titus, this head looks much more like the Emperor Titus. And also, if after his memory is damned, the statues in name of Domitian would have been erased and destroyed. So it's doubtful if these large pieces, if they were of Domitian, would have survived his damnation. A very famous piece that we see down in Domitian Square there is this Nike relief over the Heracles Gate, and a very traditional pose. She's holding a wreath in her left hand, the symbol of victory. So, for example, the victors in Smyrna are promised they'll be given a wreath of life, and she's holding a palm branch in her right hand, a symbol of victory. And so Revelation utilizes many of these images from the ancient world to teach spiritual truth. And of course, the important church of St. John there, the remains of the ciborium that had sort of a dome cupola over it, which was probably the first phase after Christianity is legalized. John buried here in this necropolis, and then later a church built by Theodosius that's destroyed by an earthquake, and of course the church there that we see the remains of Justinian. So important place to visit in Ephesus. Smyrna, the letter there, and this is one of the ones I said that have nothing bad to say to the church here. And again, this church and the church in Philadelphia are dealing with a group called the Synagogue of Satan. We know that there was a considerable number of Jews in Smyrna. We have literary evidence that the Seleucids settled about 2,000 Jewish families in Lydia and Phrygia about 2,000 or 210 BC, but we don't have any evidence specifically for Smyrna. But we do have some inscriptions that mention Jews in the city. And at the bottom in the Agora excavation, they just recently found this partial terracotta lamp that you can see with the traditional Jewish symbol of the 7-branch menorah. So again, indicating that we have Jews in this city. Smyrna was important because it built its first temple to Dea Roma, clear in 195, before the province of Asia became part of the Roman Empire in 133 BC. And so as a result of Smyrna's long-standing allegiance and ties with Rome, they were allowed to build the second imperial cult temple under Tiberius in about 26. And one of the things that coins are very important for is they give us an idea of what some of these temples look like and where they were. Obviously, they can't. They just can do a outline of what the temple looks like. And in the lower coin, we show the 3 temples. So the cities of Ephesus, Smyrna, and Pergamum were always competing for the honors related to being the first city of Asia. And so having 3 imperial cult temples was quite an honor. And then combined with the temple to Dea Roma there made Smyrna extremely important. And so here's Rome on the 7 hills. This is an image we see later on in the book of Revelation. This is Dea Roma seated on the 7 hills. One of the most important archaeological finds in recent years was found in the excavations at the Agora. And we have over 500 examples of graffiti. It's the largest collection of Greek graffiti that we have. For Latin graffiti, it's in Pompeii. And we see a particular type of graffiti that's called isosephism. And the word in Greek here, isosphema, gives us our English word that we use to describe this phenomenon. And so what you could do, because Hebrew and Greek used letters as numbers, you could calculate values, numerical values with letters. And so a Christian here in Smyrna has calculated that the sum of the letters, kurios here on the right, equal the letter omega, and then pistis, which means faith, equals 800. And so this is quite a unique, again, Christian graffito that's found there, indicating a Christian community there sometime in the late 2nd, early 3rd century. And again, this phenomenon of calculating names with numbers, they found examples of these love formulas. I love the girl whose number is, and they found the number 731 and the number 1308. And so, again, people in the ancient world having fun with numbers and being able to calculate this. For example, your girlfriend's name by a number. And of course, one of the most famous examples of isosephism is found in the book of Revelation, the number 666. And this is the number of the beast. So if some of you have ever seen some of these apocalyptic type movies, and the whole background for the idea of the beast in 666 comes here from this reference in Revelation 13:18. And most scholars think it's the sum of the letters in Hebrew for Neron Kaiser, so the Emperor Nero, who committed suicide finally in AD 68. So very interesting again for this phenomenon that we find in the Smyrna Agra. Message to Pergamum. Here, an important image is the mention of the place of Satan's throne. The first temple of Augustus built in Asia was built in Pergamum, but we have absolutely no ruins of that today. Probably built in the lower city where Bergama is today. Although we do have a contemporary temple that's in Ankara today, in Ulus. Some of you know this temple remains with the most famous inscription from the Roman world, the Res Gestae, in Latin on the front and in Greek on the sides. Here again next to Hajji Bayram Jami here in Ankara. And so this was marking the capital of the Roman province of Galatia, but giving us an idea what the temple might have looked like in Pergamum. And of course, the fourth imperial cult temple in the province after, again, we've got Pergamum, Smyrna, Ephesus, and then here in Pergamum again as the second one for Trajan here. This is the only Roman building that we have on the Acropolis. And many of the names that the emperors adopted were also the names used by God and Jesus in the New Testament. And this brought an inherent conflict for the early Christians. So here you can see the inscription, Kurion ton geis kai thalases, Lord of the land and the sea. So this is the common name then, the Lord Jesus Christ throughout the New Testament. So Christians are asked to sacrifice incense to the emperor as Lord. And if, again, they are a true follower of Jesus, they can't do this. And as a result, some died. In fact, the only martyr that we have named in Revelation, Antipas, is killed here in the city, probably for refusing to honor the emperor as a god. Altar of Zeus down below. Some people think this may be the throne of Satan. Today, the remains of the altar that you see in the museum in Berlin. The Asclepion, the very important healing shrine that's in the Pergamum today as well. And the snake positive in the Asclepion cult is a negative one in Revelation. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent, the snake called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. And this goes all the way back to the account in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve were led astray by the serpent, the snake there, to disobey God. So Temple of Serapis, Egyptian gods. There's a lot to see in Pergamum, so sometimes we have to skip one of these because of time limitations in Pergamum. As you can see by the screen, this is the longest of the 7 messages. The one in the center is the longest. Today in Akhisar, there's a cemetery right in the middle of town that's been excavated, which has left a place for visitors to come and see. This is, excuse me, the restoration of the stoa there, just completed in the last year after the pandemic. In the grounds there, they have several inscriptions, and we've mentioned this phenomenon of erasing a name. You can see up here the name of Geta, one of the emperors, has been erased there, and that reminds us of the promise in Revelation 3:5 will never erase their names from the scroll of life. So it's illustrations at these various sites of some of the things that are mentioned in these letters. And one of the big issues both in Pergamum and Thyatira is what's called eating meat sacrificed to idols. So in the ancient world, Jews always would eat kosher food. The Gentiles did not. And so they would get their meat after it had been slaughtered at the temples, sold in the meat markets, the McKellums. And part of the problem in these churches is some Christians are still clinging to their membership, for example, in pagan associations and trade guilds, and continuing to eat meals at temple dining practices. And so Paul addressed this, John addressed this, and basically they were saying it's okay to eat such meat at home, but not in cultic settings, not going into temples and eating it. So this was a major controversy for early Christians about eating, for Gentiles, non-Jewish people, eating this type of food. This really interesting relief sits in the Foire Museum in Izmir, and it shows how an animal is sacrificed in the ancient world, in this case a lamb. And it recalls the verse in Revelation 5:6. In Revelation, the most common name for Jesus is Lamb, used 26 times. It says, I saw a lamb standing who appeared to be slain. And so the one man there holding the lamb while the other cuts his throat for sacrifice. Here's one of the dining rooms in the middle city in Pergamum, and it's a space like this that the banquets would be held, and they would serve meat sacrifice to idols. And both Paul and John say that the believer should not attend activities in such dining rooms. Message to Sardis. Of course, the best preserved of the three Artemis temples in Turkey today is in Sardis. And we see this facing west like all the other temples in Ephesus and in Magnesia at Meandrum. And then we have one of the earliest Christian churches here in the southeastern corner. Here, and its first phase dates to the middle of the 4th century, around the 340, 350. So as you well know, in some of the ancient temples, they actually built the churches inside. We see that at the Red Basilica in Pergamum, also in the Temple of Apollo in Didyma. But here, the Christians in Sardis did not do that. They built a small church on the outside. This is one of the groups on the inside of the apse at this church. And this is one of the places. So as the guides, you'll have to work with your leaders, sometimes a professor, sometimes a pastor or a priest, and to decide where you want to read the letters. So this is one of the things that the groups will do as they visit the 7 churches, is read the letters that are on the screen that I've been showing you to begin each session. So this is usually where we read the letter here in Sardis. Of course, the reconstructed gymnasium and imperial hall with a lot of imperial inscriptions there. And the restored synagogue. So this is the largest Jewish synagogue outside of Israel. So it could hold approximately 1,000 people who are standing. This is the forecourt of the entrance there. Of course, the Byzantine shops are on the south side of this, and they've got current excavations here with a mosaic that's covered with glass. It's quite lovely just to the southeast of this, as well as a major gate complex that's been recently uncovered. And of course, if you've been to Sardis recently, you know that this whole space is covered. There's a roof on it now. This is what it looked like before the roof, facing westward here with the apse and the seat of the elders. So very large synagogue here, indicating a well-established and large Jewish population in this city. Philadelphia, this is a letter, again, nothing negative said about them. They're too struggling with the synagogue of Satan in this city. Modern Alasya here is, of the 7 cities, has really the least amount of things to see. Looking westward from the Acropolis across the ancient Kaukamus River Valley that goes down to the Hermus or the Gediz River near Salihli. And the circle is around the St. John's Church. That's usually the place that the groups all visit and where they do their reading. I'll have another picture of that in just a minute. This area is called the KOKSAL. Strabo writes about it because of all the many earthquakes that have been in that area. And of course, this is the area of the at Kula with a famous wine trademark. They're called Yanık, the Turkish translation of burnt land or KOKSAL. And Strabo talks about the many earthquakes that always threatened the city, and many people just lived outside the city because of the rich soil, though, that resulted from the various volcanic and earthquake activity. And of course, this is still a big grape growing region today. I was just through there 2 weeks ago. They're drying the Sultaniye grapes everywhere in the fields in this area. There was a major earthquake in AD 17, and the 12 cities of Asia erected a monument in thanks to Tiberius for giving them money. We really need to get a copy of that here, because this stands today in the Naples Museum. The original was burnt. It was in Rome and was destroyed in a fire in the 1st century. But fortunately, a copy was made here in marble, and it's in the Naples Archaeology Museum. So I got to see it a few years ago. And each of the cities is personified with a depiction of an individual here. And so here is the personification of Philadelphia on the one corner. And so 2 times Philadelphia receives a new name after became Philadelphia Neo Caesarea after 17 earthquake in gratitude to Tiberius, and then later it becomes Flavia Philadelphia after Vespasian's wife, again for financial assistance after another earthquake. And we have an interesting connection in the letter here, and I will write upon them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, New Jerusalem, and my new name. So the whole idea of a new name in the kingdom being promised to the victors here. There are a few remains of civic structures here. This is all that remains of the stadium on the north side of the Acropolis. Seats are all empty. All the remains of a theater on the hillside just before the Acropolis. So unfortunately, the road is too narrow to get a bus up here, but if you're in a car or a van, you can come through Alasya here and come up to the Acropolis and see these things as well. And then St. John's Basilica, this is where most of the groups make their only stop in the city and do their reading of the letter here. And the final of the 7 churches, we're getting ready to conclude here in just a couple minutes. And as you know, Laodicea began excavations here for the first time. I visited the site. There was nothing to see. It was unexcavated. And Jalal Shimshek and his team from Pamukkale University have been working hard now for almost 20 years, reconstructing the Syrian Street. Now they've been reconstructing the state agora, basilica there. And then the wonderful church on the other side of the site, Temple A over here to the right, the basilica dating from 4th, 5th century here. Of course, this is Honasda here to the east, and Colossae is just at the base of that near the village of Honaz. One of the more interesting things that we have in the site here, it's totally unique, is this Jewish symbol on a column fragment. I personally think this would have stood at the entrance of a synagogue here in the city. It's purposely carved. You see the 7 branches. These are the most common ways that we know that it's Jewish, the 7-branched menorah. This is the ram's horn called the shofar on this side, a palm branch here called the lulav, and then down at the bottom, a citron fruit called the etrog. So this is very common that we see in all the synagogues and other pieces of art related to Jews here. And then at some point, a Christian has carved a globus. This is the round depiction of the world here at the bottom of the cross over the top of this. So extremely interesting thing in the North Agora that we stop and talk to the groups about and discuss. Is this a positive, a negative image, or how do you interpret it? So it's kind of a fun exercise to see this piece of archaeological realia and try and interpret what it means to us today. The bridge to Ephesus, Paul would have walked across this as he left Laodicea going to Ephesus. And of course, our messenger carrying the revelation and the 7 letters, 7 messages would have returned to Ephesus across this bridge as well. And of course, one of the famous admonitions of warnings of Jesus here is to the church in Laodicea, because you're lukewarm or neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spew you out of your mouth. And of course, we have the hot here in Hierapolis to the north. The cold represented by the snow on Babada to the south, across the valley above Denizli, and this image about the spiritual condition of the church in Laodicea. Many interpreters think that it relates to the water system here. And like many of the ancient cities all over Turkey today, they had a combination of an aqueduct, siphon system here. And this sits south of the site. See Pamukkale to the left over here. And this is the water tower or I should say the south water tower here, that water was brought from springs about 8 kilometers to the south in modern Denizli to provide water for the city of Laodicea. So that's the end of 7 churches. Just a few final comments about working with faith groups who come here for pilgrimage visits. My experience is most of these are coming from North America. They're Asian or Australian, some occasional New Zealand. We're starting to get a few South African groups. In fact, when I was in Sardis this summer, I did meet a Catholic group from South Africa who are visiting the 7 churches. On my boat trip to Patmos, we had an Orthodox group from the United States. But mainly it's Protestant groups, and then a group within Protestantism, evangelicals. So that's the demographic who are coming to this country to travel, to do Paul tours or 7 churches tour. One of the things is most visitors have visited Israel at least once before they come to Turkey. So Saturday I met with these folks here, and they came through Anatolia, and he basically said, I've done so many trips in Israel with our church group and others. Everybody says, is there another place to go? Why don't we check Turkey? So they're over here doing that, and he's going to begin bringing groups over here as well. And sometimes Turkey is paired with Greece to attract visitors. So as you well know, and I can tell you from experience, just talking even with all the groups who come from the United States, because we're in a dangerous part of the world, with a war going on to the north, of course, with Syria, Iran, Iraq, and people are afraid to travel here, thinking that Turkey is an unsafe country. And so that's kind of an ongoing myth or idea we have to change people's thinking about. And invariably, when we ask the groups after they finish their touring here, we'll ask them, did you ever feel unsafe during your time here, or did you have any problems? And they said, no, we loved it. We feel safer here than even back home in the United States. So, and as I mentioned, Paul's journeys in 7 churches are our most important itineraries. So some outcomes of a faith tour. So why are people coming here to travel? They're spending a lot of money. They're spending a time here. They're seeing that the Bible is historical and not a myth. And that all of these sites that are mentioned by Paul, mentioned in Revelation, mentioned by Luke in the book of Acts, they're real places, and with a history and with an archaeology. And as the guide, working with a group leader, you're going to be telling that history, that story. And the groups come, they better visualize the world of the first Jews and Christians. They see a Roman road, they see Roman bathhouse, they see what a theater, a bouleuterion, an agora, all of these things were part of the ancient world of the early Jews and Christians. And as we've been talking about, they understand the geography of the Bible. They understand that going from Antioch and the Orontes to Alexandria Troas is a very long way. What Luke does in Acts 19:1, in one verse, traveling from Antioch to Ephesus, a distance of roughly 1,200 kilometers is in one verse. So again, they begin to understand the geography of what they're reading about. They experience firsthand the places related to Peter and Paul and John. And so having those kind of connections with these early church leaders is very important. They feel spiritual renewal from traveling where the apostles walked and visited. And so that's a very typical comment. They come back here, and it's strengthened their faith and it has encouraged them, and they become better readers of the Bible. Their faith in God has been strengthened as well. And so, and of course, one important thing is they're taking many photographs to share with friends back home in churches, and professors who come are taking photographs to share with their students in classes back home. So these are some very positive outcomes of what a faith tour is all about. So here's a happy group that we had in Hierapolis. Everybody likes a good group picture as well. Here at the front in this gate. As Gokhan mentioned, this is the new revised biblical Turkey that we released in 2020. This is the 4th printing. And because of new archaeological discoveries, new things I learned, we can constantly update and make corrections to the book that's published by Ege Yayınları in Istanbul. One thing I will mention, I'm also very active in writing articles about Paul, the early church revelation, and I have most of these posted on Academia, and you can download these free of charge. So you can just type my name into Academia and you'll find these various articles. So thank you very much for attending, and look forward to some questions and comments.
Well, thank you very much. This has been intense and very informative, the webinar, and time really flew by. I didn't even notice that I've been listening to you for about 80 minutes now, so thank you very much. All of this information is a book worth of information, so thank you very much for that. And we're getting some questions from the comments section, but before I move on to them, I would like to invite the other spectators to write if they have any comments. But first, I'd like to cut in the line, and I've got a few questions. Well, about the journeys of Paul. We know that Paul traveled to various places, especially in Anatolia, and in some places he performed some miracles, and he invited people to the faith of Christ, and also he convinced the others into this new religion. And also he was shown reaction from certain places, and he was even stoned and chased away. So do you think Paul achieve what he intended in these missionary journeys?
Later on in the book of Romans, he makes a comment as he's making plans to go to Spain. And he says, I've reached all these regions in the east. Now, as we saw, the vast territory between Anatolia and Greece and then Italy, that he feels that he's accomplished what he should do there. And now he's going westward from Rome. So I think what Paul felt like is that he's leaving it now to the local church leaders to continue his work in those areas while he goes on and plants new works. So I think he was quite successful in doing what he did.
So we can, in other words, we can say that he finished the local organizations, and he already had local leaders, and he could move on to the new places to spread the word. Thank you very much for that. And I've got one more question, especially in the 3 missionary journeys. We see that he repeatedly visits certain cities such as Iconium, Lystra, Derbe, and a few other places. So what was the importance of those cities? Did they have any special importance, or did they just happen to be on his way?
I think they're important because they're the first churches that he establishes here in Galatia. But again, because of the road system, the ancient road system follows largely the modern road system. Mountains and rivers haven't changed. And so this road system that came up from Antioch, the modern highway coming through Adana, up through the Cilician gates, and then passing through Konya and then westward. That was called the common highway, and then ran all the way westward to Ephesus. And so since Paul is going in that way, he's going to follow that road, and he's going to revisit those cities. So I think it's a both and in terms of the answer. But
yeah, thank you. So I'm getting some comments here on the comments section. We've got lots of thanks from our followers, and Mr. Serdar Uzun, who's a fellow tour guide and also an academic from Antalya University, he's got a question. Do you think Anatolia, which hosts such important characters and places, gets enough attention? And do you have any suggestions for an effective promotion of Paul's route?
In the first question, I say no, it doesn't get enough attention. And one of the reasons is that in the Bible atlases and the maps that Christians are looking at, it says Asia Minor, for example, and where it shows this. And I can say Americans are very bad with geography. And so they don't make the connection that Asia Minor is Turkey. And so when you start talking about Turkey being a Bible land, they kind of look at you, huh? They don't realize that. The Tarsus is here in this country, and that Ephesus is here. And so it's been an ongoing education process. For example, I work with one of the agencies in Izmir, and we go over to these Biblical Society meetings every year, working with professors and helping educate them about travel here in Turkey. And so, I mean, one of the issues is, people are asking, what kind of infrastructure? Do you have nice hotels? Do you have all, highways? What are all this? And quite frankly, it's easier traveling here than in Greece for myself when I'm leading tours, because usually we need some medical care periodically. The hospital system here with the clinics are excellent. So it's got everything, and of course the excellent food in the restaurants and the hotels. So, but it is an ongoing challenge of getting of bringing the biblical sites to people's attention. This Congress that we were at in Cappadocia was one of the reasons that was convened to help talk about how to for Inanç tourism to grow, and various means of doing that. And again, various the guide associations are working to help do that, working with the Ministry of Culture and Tourism in Ankara with advertisements and whatnot. So, but that's one of the things I'm very much involved in doing in publications, and that's why I think these kind of seminars are so important as well.
Yeah, thank you. And again, Mr. Sardarzun has another question. He asks, even following the Paul's journeys with today's means of transportation seems rather troublesome or difficult. He asks, what made him different from the other apostles, which made him go on such a long and arduous journey?
Well, Paul was fortunate to have his friend Luke write down his story and the journeys, but we know the other apostles traveled as well. We have some going all the way in what is today in southeastern Turkey. There in the Syriac church was started over there in Urfa and beyond, Nusaybin, Nisibis, with some of the disciples there. Of course, Peter makes his way all the way to Rome as well. So he's traveling, and 1 Peter 1:1 addresses the churches in the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. So I personally think Paul starts the churches in what is today central Anatolia as well. So he's traveling there, and so we see Timothy and Titus and again, we mentioned this gentleman named Epaphras from Colossae. He's traveled all the way to Rome to support Paul in prison. So there's a lot of people in the early Christian community traveling all over the Eastern Empire.
Yeah. Thank you for that. There is a question from another friend of ours, Mr. Sinan Kurt, who's a tour guide and also an archaeologist. And he says, when you visit the Odeon in Ephesus, you can see the cross sign in the entrance. And so the cross signs can be seen in the heads of Augustus statues in Ephesus Museum as well. So what is the comment of you about these cross signs?
Right. So a very good observation. And typically I'll point these out. And I think this is part of when after Constantine now and the cities become more and more Christianized, these civic institutions then are Christianized as well. So by putting a cross there, for example, at the Odeon over the in the lintel over the archway there is a sign of that, and also the whole idea of Augustus and Livia. And we actually have a later church historian, Eusebius, who thinks that God used Augustus in order to prepare the way for the gospel with the Pax Romana, so that Paul and the others could actually travel in peace and do this. And so they saw Augustus being very important to God's plan for the rise and growth of early Christianity. Another place where you see these crosses is quite interesting is in the Temple of Artemis in Sardis. So if you come around to the backside and look up on the area there, there's a number of crosses at the entrance that are carved there. And also in Greek, the words phos and zoe, light and life, both important words in the New Testament, carved in there. So again, I think it's later Christians who are doing this in these public buildings.
Yeah, thank you very much. And there are other questions, but Sinan asked an additional question which can be linked to this. Any comments about ictus symbols? I think
that's
talking about this wheel symbol. Yeah,
the wheel thing. So there's a lot of discussion about that, whether that is an ictus or it's really a game board called Merrill's. My personal opinion, it is a game board. You just see them too much, and especially now at the new excavations at Laodicea. If you come in to the sacred portico, there's just probably 15 or more of these scratched into the pavement with various game boards there. So I personally don't view these. Another one is inside the forecourt of the Sardis synagogue there. And what's interesting, this one inside the wheel, there's actually Greek letters, and the words from the letters bring they say a vowel of Lada. So that one, for example, is clearly not an ichthus. It's in a Jewish context. Plus, it's also with the letters tell us what it was laid there for. So anyway.
Beautiful, thank you. Göksel Savaş asks an interesting question. Do you agree with the theory of Paul was a spy of the Romans?
I guess I would have to find out where he's spying at. If he was a spy of the Romans, they sure mistreated him a whole lot. I mean, he was in a Roman colony at Pisidian Antioch when he was run out of the city. He was imprisoned in the Roman colony of Philippi. He was 2 years imprisoned by two different governors in the province of Judea. And so I guess just, and of course, now he did have favor in front of the Roman governor of Achaia when he was in Corinth, but he used the citizenship in a unique way to get him out of trouble occasionally. And as we said, when he finally had to appeal to Caesar, to travel to Rome, so to face trial there. But I don't see him in any way as a spy.
Yeah, it's a very commonly argued topic. I don't even call this a theory, but some people claim that he was there to corrupt the religion, maybe because the way he transformed the message of the Christ. So lots of people love to talk about this in this way.
Oh, to be honest with you, it's the first time I've ever heard anybody mention that.
Probably I spend a lot of time among the tour guides, so that's where I get these stories.
Okay.
Well, an interesting question. He's asking, what are the characteristics of a typical Christian faith tour, like duration, budget, accommodation, and tour guides' preferences of the tour participants?
Typically, I will get an inquiry from somebody. I'm working, for example, with a professor right now. So I'll say, how many days do you plan the tour? One of the issues for Americans, usually we have only 2 weeks vacation there. So usually you've got to do a tour within 14 days, including travel. So that's a typical length at the maximum. For student tours, we'll obviously have a little bit of a lower budget. Maybe even occasionally staying in pensions or 3-star hotels. For most of our adult tours, we'll be staying with churches and others in 4- and 5-star hotels, usually with half board. I personally like to not include the lunches as part of the program and let each person pay for their own lunch because it's inexpensive here. And then people want to eat out from the hotels in local restaurants. And so you as the tour guides, I mean, you know the good local restaurants that you can introduce. I mean, when you go to Salihli area, you eat udun köfte, okay, or, you know, here in Aksu, after we visit Perge, we have the famous Aksu piyaz, you know. And so you have the various chopshish, you know, or in Selçuk. So you can, you know, introduce the cuisine of Turkey at lunchtime as you're traveling around, which is fun. And then in terms of the agencies, you know, they will obviously choose guides that are knowledgeable about how to work with faith groups. And I think just being a part of a seminar like this and doing your reading and background and will help prepare you to do that so you can be effective. And I really know that for many groups, the guide that they work with, they found they have a very strong bond and relationship that's established because, again, you're the face of the country, and they're putting the group in your hands. And as you take them around and talking about this wonderful land, the history, the culture, and everything, you will probably be requested for future tours when they come back here again. So, you know, a really important place to play in the whole process of these tours.
Yeah, thank you. We've got another question from Mr. Blatbog Amil. He's asking, Have there been any disagreement between the disciples like Paul, Peter, and John about inviting the Gentiles to the gospel's message? And why did they all concentrate on Anatolia?
Well, we know a very famous confrontation between St. Paul and St. Peter in Antioch over this whole issue about eating with Gentiles, because there was a very conservative faction from Jerusalem that came up and did not want to eat non-kosher food with the Gentiles. And so this disagreement, confrontation is mentioned by Paul in the book of Galatians. But they had a very famous council in Acts chapter 15 in Jerusalem to discuss this question on how Jews and Gentiles who are both followers of Jesus could eat together without conflict. But as the church became more Gentile and less Jewish, especially in the diaspora, that is outside of Judea, then these issues of eating food sacrificed to idols and issues of circumcision began to fade away and become less important. And of course, why Anatolia? I mean, we had a large population of cities concentrated, especially in Western Anatolia, in the province of Asia. A road system that was good here. Many Jews living in Anatolia. By some estimates, maybe up to 1 million Jews living in Anatolia in the first century. And of course, Paul's common practice, he would go to the synagogue first. There was a synagogue in town. And so, of course, in these early decades, Jesus or the Jesus followers were thought to be a sect of Judaism. It's only in the late 60s and we begin to see what's called the parting of the ways between the Jews and the Jewish followers of Jesus. So, but at the early stage, they were under the legal umbrella of Judaism and viewed as such. And so this is really why Anatolia was so critical, and even as it is today, the important land bridge between East and West. So everybody going back and forth between there to Greece, to Italy, and beyond had to go through Anatolia.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I guess we've got no new questions, so we can close up. So
Okay.
It's been an absolute pleasure for me, not just to listen to you, but also to host you on our channel, because I had long been trying to participate in one of your seminars, but I never had the opportunity. So this has been a very good chance for me to meet you here.
Sure.
And I also would like to thank you for your time on behalf of all our fellow scholars and tour guides. And we also have tour guide candidates or students here on this channel watching us tonight. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of them. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Gokhan, and my pleasure to be with you all tonight. And again, if I can ever help any one of you, please let me know, and I'm here to serve you and to assist in any way I can.
Thank you very much.
You're all doing a great job, so keep up the good work.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank all of our followers for joining us tonight. So it's been a pleasure to be with you here. So looking forward to meet you in another episode. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.